How about the transfer portal additions today, Palmer? Rylan Goede and Jaheim Singletary. Let's start with Singletary because he was the first one to announce.
Yeah, a tough blow there with a, kid that's just coming out of his freshman season, former 5-star cornerback, somebody that Georgia pushed hard for later in that cycle, added him. I want to say it was October or November of that 2021 season when he was in his senior year down there in Jacksonville. We had heard rumblings that he was homesick, that this and that, and that started happening pretty early. Obviously sticking around and was a part of what Georgia did this year, maybe not necessarily on the field, but we heard the praise of Kirby Smart for that defensive scout team and the way that they bought into being TCU. I would imagine Jaheim Singletary was a part of that. I would imagine he got some reps with the ones and twos just because of how few guys Georgia had at corner, but he didn't play in all that many games. Only 3 or 4 games that he played in this year. Didn't appear on the stat sheet other than his participation. But an incredibly talented player that I would imagine we're going to see go making plays elsewhere. Tough loss, but again, you look at what Georgia has in that room. Just in his class alone, you've got Dalen Everett and Jaheim. Not Jaheim Singletary. Jaheim Singletary is the one leaving. Julian Humphrey is still there as well. 2 guys that appeared to be above him on the depth chart based on playing time and indications there. Hear the phone dinging, so you got to check and make sure that it's not another one of these portal entries, draft announcements. It's not. But yeah, Jaheim, I would imagine he's going to go make plays, be an incredible player somewhere else. Georgia fans obviously don't enjoy seeing that, but Georgia coaches wishing him the best of luck. And hey, again, as we brought up with Deuce Robinson and the guys that they're recruiting to replace guys like Darnell, they've got guys recruited in this class of 2023 to replace Jaheim at corner. Guys like a very talented class that I'm drawing blanks on right now.
I can pull up the signing class, but while I do that, Andy Stowe, I think this is a fair question just in general in this transfer portal era where guys are more likely to fly the coop, go check out something else. Andy Stowe asks, why leave? He has a chance to play next year. That's what Andy Stowe just doesn't understand. And I will say before you answer, Palmer, there has been some really good data on skill players, quick guys, running backs, wide receivers, cornerbacks, DBs. Statistically, they are more likely to hit the transfer portal than most other positions. So I don't know if that is the case here or if there were some other homesick issues like you alluded to earlier, Palmer. But why isn't it just this simple as to say, you got a chance next year, stick around?
I would imagine it's a little bit of both. And as you were speaking, I pulled up the recruiting class there. AJ Harris, a borderline 5-star kind of guy. Daniel Harris, Chris Peel, Justin Rhett, Kyron Jones, who's an athlete that they expect to play in the secondary. If you're talking strictly about secondary, not necessarily just corners, they've got Janelle Aguero back there as well. So an incredibly talented group that they're bringing in 2023. And that kind of goes right into the answer here of why leave. He's got a chance to play. Well, he has a chance not to play as well. And I understand that a lot of folks want to see players compete, and they don't want to see them just take the easy way out just because somebody thinks the grass is greener elsewhere. Well, it's hard to blame a kid, when you've got so many factors going into it and when there's so much competition. Just as much as there is a chance that he plays, there's no guarantee that he plays. And when you're a former 5-star type player like that, somebody that probably expects coming into college to be 3 and out and head to the NFL after 3 years, there's a chance that you're not doing that at Georgia. And that's not a bad thing. You get so much development. You see guys that take a little bit longer to develop and take their time to come out. That's not a bad thing. It's also not a bad thing to go make your money after 3 years. And if you're not playing, you probably don't have a chance to do that. But if you go somewhere else, you don't have to be on the national championship winning team to go make your money. You can go do that from a Florida or Miami, two schools that are probably going to be pretty heavily linked with Jaheim here. So, and also, I mean, again, going back to what I said about the guys that are in his class, they appear to be ahead of him on this depth chart. And there's not a ton of openings on this defense. It's a young group already. Yes, you do lose Keely Ringo there in all likelihood. Still haven't had an announcement from him per se, but he did say in the locker room that he was looking forward to coming out and going pro. So that's all but done. So, Keely's gone, but Kamari Lassiter is still there. Javon Bullard is still there at star. If you're trying to find spots in the secondary for a guy like Jaheim Singletary to play, yes, you're going to have an opening in the spot that was manned by Keely Ringo, but you've got a former 5-star Nyland Green there. You've got a 5-star in Dalen Everett. You've got a top 100 player in Julian Humphrey. That Jaheim would be competing against, plus those guys that we mentioned in the class of 2023.
All right, let's wrap this up, Palmer. You may have more roster management news popping up at any given moment. Your time is precious, so I don't want to keep you on for too long. I can't say enough about the career of Rylan Goede as a Georgia Bulldog. He didn't have the stats, but, there are guys in this Georgia program that mean a lot more to the team than just touchdown receptions, catches, blocks, and all that. And Goede, to me, he showed up wanting to play a little bit of baseball too, had a hard time staying healthy at Georgia, but he loves the Dogs, but sometimes you just have to make a career decision, and I think that's what Goede had to do as a graduate transfer.
Well, and we probably want him to stick around in football as long as he can because he's our podcasting competition as a great show. A Grady, somebody that's going to be graduating from Grady in this spring, sports media program. He's a guy, and you got the sense from his announcement that he really appreciated what everything Georgia had to offer to him, the University of Georgia, that is, not just Georgia football. Georgia football had plenty to offer him in terms of experiences, maybe not playing time, and he's going to go seek that out elsewhere with 2 years of eligibility left. But in terms of leaving, he's certainly made the most of the University of Georgia in his time at UGA. So that's a guy. Talking about that tight end room again. There's not going to be a ton of experience there. You would like to keep a guy like that around, maybe. But certainly somebody that has made the most of his time at UGA. No hard feelings, and he's going to go test the waters elsewhere.
Brett Seether also announced earlier this week, too, that he's gone. So the tight end room with a lot of overhaul, and Todd Hartley has his work cut out for him. Jake Rowe, we've already touched on pretty much everybody. You came in at the perfect moment. Just put a bow on this thing. What are your thoughts on Darnell heading to the league, Singletary, and Goede today, the other two roster news updates as it relates to Georgia departures from 2022?
Tip of the iceberg, man. Tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more coming, more declarations for the NFL draft. We know that. Definitely more portal guys as well. I expect offensive linemen, maybe two at some point. Expect another guy on defense, at least one more guy on defense, maybe more than that. And it could be, some of this stuff could wait until after spring. But, as far as the tight end thing, Georgia saw this coming, right? Georgia's really wanted Lawson Lucky, and they were able to keep him. They really wanted Pierce Sperling. They're going all out for Deuce Robinson, and Walker Lyons is another guy. Although, I think he'll be a 2024 kid. I believe that's going to be a one-year mission for him before he's able to come back. So Georgia's trying to load up at the tight end position for a reason. Obviously, Brock Bowers is back this year. So there's a lot going on there, and Georgia's done a really good job of kind of putting itself in a position where I don't think there's one single player, and Palmer may have brought this up because he and I talked about it. There's not really one guy, maybe out of the top five guys on the roster, outside of the top five guys on the roster, where it really just kind of shakes Georgia to the core if they lose somebody or it really hurts them, like Jermaine Burton last year. Georgia couldn't lose a guy like that this year, and it really, really affected them.
How about this, guys, as we wrap up? I don't know how many huge Johnny Cash appreciators there are, but Walker Lyons is from Folsom, California. He walks the Lions. Appreciate y'all tuning in on a
while
last
we've been
minute.
on here,
What's
Keely
that, Palmer?
I said while we've been on here, Keely did make it official, posted, took to social media with his announcement. We knew that one was coming. Told Jake that in the locker room, but Keely has made that official.
All right, well, let's sum up Keely Ringo's career while we're at it here too then. He got beaten up by Georgia fans and a lot of people who aren't Georgia fans, but he ultimately leaves here with 2 rings.
In some ways, the Stetson Bennett of Georgia defensive back, of Georgia, the defense. I mean, I don't think that they're comparable in terms of their how highly recruited they were, because obviously Keely was the #1 player at his position. But I do think they are comparable when you start talking about how they're looked at and how they perform in the field to incredibly underappreciated clutch performers. Some of Keely's best plays came in the biggest moments. They just weren't as visible as Stetson Bennett's. One of them was that pick 6, but the the pass breakup and the tight coverage, Fran Brown brought that up to me, specifically when I talked to him at media day, was those 2 last plays of Ringo and how huge they were for Georgia. Big time player, heck of a story, and a guy that I know has a lot of love in his heart for the University of Georgia. He's going to go represent them well.
Well said, guys. More of where this came from over at DawgsHQ.com. Hit like, hit subscribe. Keep engaging in the comments section. Let us know what you think about these Dogs as they part ways and leave Georgia with a whole lot of hardware. Thanks as always. We'll catch you next time.